Hi everyone. In this exercise, we're going to work on ear training and we're going to work on identifying different intervals by ear by figuring out what they sound like. So we're going to use musictheory.net, and in the exercises section, we're going to go down to the ear training section and we're going to go to interval ear training. So one of the most useful things about ear training in intervals is being able to like just hear the distance and the quality rather than trying to figure it out on the staff. Being able to hear intervals will be very useful for a lot of different reasons. Because if you listen to a piece of music and you're trying to figure out what the notes are, if you can kind of like go note by note and figure out the distance between them just by listening, you'll be able to figure out how to write it. So this is important, and the more you can practice ear training, the better it's going to, and the easier it's going to get. So let's go to the settings first to just take a look at, see if we need to adjust anything. All right, so let's see, what kind of intervals are we going to work with? So we have the unison, which is the prime or the first interval. Now, here you're going to notice that we're going to have some names that we might have not encountered. The unison is not something that we really saw in the lesson. I talked about it, but it wasn't in the lesson. That's because the term unison is not really about writing an interval on the staff. It's about how it sounds. Unison is one sound. That's the way that the word breaks up. Uni for one, and then son for sound. So this has to do with the way the interval sounds. So the unison is the same thing as the prime interval or the first interval, but it's not going to be minor second or anything like that. It's going to be exactly the same note. So from A to A sharp, even though that technically is a prime interval in terms of generic interval, A and A sharp is not a unison because it's not the same pitch. So just be mindful of that. Okay, so we're going to also do minor second, minor third, major third. We're not going to be dealing with augmented and diminished second and thirds or sixths and sevenths, because diminished and augmented intervals are going to sound the same as other intervals here. So we're not going to use diminished and augmented in the context of just trying to like listen for intervals. So major third, minor third, major third, perfect fourth, and the tritone. Now the tritone, I mentioned this in the lesson, is 6 half steps, and it divides the perfect octave exactly in half. A tritone, if you were to write it on the staff, could either be an augmented fourth, if you do a generic interval of a fourth, or a diminished fifth, if you're working with a generic interval of a fifth. But the tritone is sonic in terms of sound, the same thing as a diminished fifth or an augmented fourth. Both of those intervals on the staff are sonically a tritone. Okay? So the perfect fifth is next, minor sixth, minor seven, major seventh, and the octave. We're going to leave the intervals that are greater than an octave unchecked for now. We're going to do display style starting from the bottom, ascending, and then play them at the same time. I like that. That way you can hear them at the same time. And we're going to keep the range from C3 to C5. So we get some lower notes and some higher notes. And we're going to keep that the way it is, both notes. Okay, that should be good enough. All right, so I've also pulled up the pop-up keyboard because that could be helpful for you guys at first if ear training seems hard. So you can get the pop-up keyboard from the tools. Remember that. It's in the tools section in the main page of musictheory.net. All right, so let's listen and try to figure it out. So we have... Okay, so let's figure out the first note first. So the first note is... Let's figure out in the keyboard where that is. So I approximated that it was around here, but it's B flat or A sharp. That's our first note. Okay, so let's listen again. So, ba, ba. Let's see how many half steps that is. Ba, 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 ba. That sounds about right. All right, so that's 1, 2, 3. 3 half steps is a minor third. So this is going to be a minor third. All right, next step is almost the same. I think it started from the same note, but it's actually an octave lower. I can hear that it's lower. So that's B flat or A sharp. And then the next note is what? So this sounds a little bit bigger. Let's go half step by half step until we get the next note. So that's ba, ba, ba. I think that's the same note. Ba, ba. Let's compare, make sure that's what we have. Excellent. So we have that. Now let's count the half steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 half steps. That is going to be our major third. All right, this one sounds like a bigger interval. So let's see. The first note was ba, ba. So wa, la, la. So I'm just kind of playing a few different keys so you guys kind of like hear if you're far off or if you're close. So we're starting from here. This is F sharp or G flat. And let's listen to the next note. So we have fa, da, 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 da. So this is a pretty big interval. So let's go a few half steps until we find it. I think that was the top note. Let's listen again. Cool. So, all right. So we have our notes here. F sharp to F natural, or G flat to F natural, however you want to think about it. So let's count how many half steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11. So that's almost a perfect octave. A perfect octave would be 12. So one less is a major seventh. All right. So let's see if it turns green. Cool. Cool. So okay. So I can immediately recognize what interval this is, because this interval has a very special sound. So this is da, da. Let's figure it out. I think that's D sharp. I mean D flat. And then I think that was the top note. Let's listen back. Cool. So let's see. That's C sharp G or D flat G. So that is how many half steps? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so 6 is, if you remember the explanation that I gave earlier when we were going through the intervals, 6 half steps is the tritone, which is the same thing as augmented fourth or a diminished fifth. So tritone, if we had written it on the staff, if we had written this as C sharp G natural, that would have been a diminished fifth. Now, if we had written it as D flat G, that would be an augmented fourth. But in the context of ear training, listening for this interval, doesn't matter whether it's augmented fourth or diminished fifth. It's just the tritone, because it has exactly the same sound. So That's gonna be the tritone. All right, so ba, 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 la, sol. I think it's G sharp, but it's the lowest one. So this is G sharp, and if you're like you might like be pretty good at picking up pitch, but if you're not sure, just like kind of click around until you find one that you feel like matches, you know. You know, I've been doing this for a long time, so I can really tell pitch right away. But if you haven't practiced this, you're not gonna be able to pick up pitches like right from the start. But this is where ear training and practice with ear training can really make you very quick at doing this. So if you're not sure, just pull up the pop-up keyboard and just play through the keys until you find one that matches. I usually recommend that you start from the bottom note. You can start from the top note too if that helps you. Some people are able to hear higher pitch better than lower pitch, so it really depends on how your ear works. So we had... Wait, let me listen again. I already forgot. Cool. So that's G sharp, and that's the top note, which is C sharp or A flat, D flat, however you want to look at it. How many half steps is that? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 half steps is gonna be a perfect fourth. Ooh, okay, so this interval also has a very particular sound. It's very close, and it's very, very tight, close intervals. You can hear that. All right, so this is... All right, I was off by a half step. Not always perfect, but, close enough. So, so we start from here, and the next note, I think, was just 1 half step above. Let's listen. All right, so this interval is just 1 half step, and now 1 half step is the same thing as a minor second. So di ba. I think that's the bottom note. Cool. So this is A, G, A. So that's going to be how many half steps? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 half steps. That's 10 half steps is a minor seventh. A major seventh would be 11, and the octave would be 12. So, all right, let's do this final example, and you guys can do as many as you want at home. So let's see. So F sharp. So F sharp. Da, ba. I think that's the top note. Ba. Let's listen. Cool. So that was it. How many half steps is that? 3 half steps. So 3 half steps is a minor third. All right. Okay, so we're gonna stop here. So like I said, practice this a ton at home so that you get very quick at figuring out the intervals. Eventually, you don't even need to know what note you started in. You'll be able to tell from just the sound all the different intervals. Like I've been practicing this a long time, so I can just tell. I don't even need the keyboard. I can know there's a tritone. That's an octave. That's a minor sixth. Major seventh. Perfect fourth. Anyway, so I just want to show you this so that you see that as you practice this a lot, you're going to be able to just hear the sound of the interval and know immediately what it is. And this is where practice makes perfect, especially with ear training. All right, guys, this is it for this lesson and this exercise, but practice this at home a lot more so you get very comfortable with this. See you later.